Concur with everything Professor Yu just said, and I think it's a terrific point from where I should pick up from. He basically explained what the situation is, what Lawfare is. Brief moment here to describe the why. Everyone always asks, why is this happening? Why is this getting worse? And the answer to me couldn't be any more obvious. For the same reason a bully will take the lunch money of a kid day after day is the same reason why the left is escalating their Lawfare tactics to areas once unthinkable. I mean, they're literally trying to put President Trump in bars for the rest of his life and to rig an election that way. And the reason they've been able to progress over the last decade or so, if you map out the trajectory of increasingly antagonistic Lawfare-type actions, is because there is no resistance. And so I absolutely agree there needs to be a fight back and believe that's what we're doing at the Oversight Project. We've sued Biden over 100 times, have produced record sets that have destroyed key narratives, but that's not enough. So we need to survey kind of the troops if we're really going to speak in terms of warfare and getting to an actual place to fight back. So there's three categories of troops, I will say right now, which are wholly insufficient. The first is the United States Congress, and in particular, the current U.S. House of Representatives and its majority. Now, what was supposed to be a red wave election to provide a check on the Biden administration and its most flagrant excesses has turned into the exact opposite. I don't think anyone can disagree that the weaponization of the Biden administration and others has gotten worse since the majority flipped to Republicans this Congress. And why is that? It's because now there is just a token veneer of opposition to give this kind of attack some legitimacy. And it's because we do not demand nearly enough of our elected leaders to actually get results. We have been stuck in a cycle of applauding the announcement of process. What I mean by that is we praise people for sending letters. We praise them for holding hearings where they don't even develop a record or ask any hard questions. They're uncoordinated messes intended only to generate Twitter clips and only for the sole political purpose of associating a politician with a conflict that the people care about. They've completely given up any means to actually use their power to put an end to this. Now, there are limits to what Congress can do, but the most obvious one is stop funding this stuff. At every step of the way, this House majority decided to fund, in particular, all of these prosecutions which have connective tissue back to federal funds going out one way or the other. They've continued the border crisis. They've given President Biden every last legislative accomplishment he's wanted. It's not far-fetched when they say he has the best legislative record since Lyndon B. Johnson. Of course, I think the legislative record's awful, but its body of work in terms of its history and magnitude certainly compares to that, and it was gifted to him by a House Republican majority. And so we can never even pretend to begin to fight back until we start demanding those people who we vest with power the actual results and demand the results that we need. What this looks like in pure practice is an avalanche of subpoenas that are enforced, not just the sending of a subpoena over letter, but actually enforced. People in front of depositions every single day, and not just this limited kind of shot and window that politicians like to take where it's a cabinet secretary in a hearing or somebody else behind closed doors. I'm talking about thousands at a scale that far exceeds what the January 6th committee was able to pull off. Now, really quick on that, because I think this really proves the point that Congress is completely ineffective. For Speaker McCarthy to become Speaker, he had to make a series of concessions. One of those concessions was the establishment of a weaponization committee, which was sold at the time as a parallel to the 1970s mega church committee. And it would be endowed with the full funding sources that the January 6th committee had, about $20 million. They haven't touched that money, but for a few $1 million. We are going to end this Congress with money either returning back to the Biden administration that was supposed to be spent investigating it, or some other means of getting rid of it inside the legislative branch. Literally, resources in this fight are being left on the table. Next step in the war, and a big problem I think we need to confront, the conservative legal movement. We're in this disaster in large part due to them and our continued reliance on them. The best example I've ever encountered on this was, post-January 6th. A lot of friends of mine who did nothing wrong that day but happened to be a staffer for the wrong White House were faced with, tens and thousands of dollars of legal bills just to comply with the congressional subpoena. What was the conservative legal movement's reaction to that? Profit maximization. To charge these young and up-and-coming staffers with debt that'll saddle them for the rest of their careers. The same thing plays out in all the other kind of lawfare exercises. Our lawyers, the ones that will nominate for, to be USAs or judges one day, we allow them to rape us financially in these situations. And a movement cannot survive much longer if criminal defense and defense in this area is that prohibitively expensive. And so we need to disrupt this market that is feeding off our biggest problems. And I think when we talk about new institutions and what needs to be built to actually deal with this moment, we need to fundamentally reconsider the role that the conservative legal establishment plays in it. It's time for them to get on the team and in these fights and not just get rich off them, because that's what I see happening across the board. It's why legal defense funds are so important right now, but they need not be, because we do have the capacity and the organizational potential to solve that problem. And finally, I'll say, absolutely right on the state AGs. Why we haven't seen any action coming out of state AGs, I think there's been some good nods and steps in that movement, is the same reason we don't see actions out of Congress. We basically are too cheap of dates as a base. We need to demand actual results. And if you look at the chargeable potential activity, it's all out there. I mean, the Biden family business spans multiple jurisdictions that are red right now. Virginia, Louisiana, they instantly come to mind. The legal theories that could be proffered and utilized, there is no shortage of. And so I guess in closing, would encourage everybody to hold our elected leadership to a much, much higher standard. Because I think we're eventually just going to slowly boil over and die out if there is not a fight back. And right now we have a bunch of people who are telling everyone in this room that they are fighting back, but they're leaving every tool on the table, and that's not all right. So I'll end there.